Hey man, I'm not gonna lie to you too, guys. I mean, just the fact that we don't know where Ian Cunningham is going to go. I mean, we have to get to know our GM. We've been slowly doing that, but I think about it is the transparency. I've talked about that before. The transparency makes it so easier to understand the direction of where your
Yeah.
GM wants to go. Everything is not so secret service. Everything is a need to know basis. You're getting it direct from the horse's mouth. He's saying what he doesn't like. He's saying what he does like. So as far as like some people saying, man, we got to trade up to get this player. I don't see that in this particular GM. This GM says, I like my draft picks. I like to
Yeah.
build the draft. So I don't see him necessarily trading up for anyone, but I can still see him also still trading back, so to try to get more picks.
I have a question for you. Stop right there. I have a question for all of y'all. I'm glad you said that.
Mm-hmm.
Which pick would be the most smartest to trade? Would it be 48 or 79? Because when you look at that 48, there's going to be guys that slip through the gap that could be first round picks. As I told y'all, look at that Xavier Watts just last year. To me, he was a late first round talent, but he slipped through the cracks because a lot of people just weren't sure about his size and him playing multiple positions. They thought he was going to be a project, sort of like what Troy Anderson was going to be when we drafted him in the second round. But I want to know from y'all perspective, 48 or 79, which one y'all trading? Because if I'm looking at 48, if I can get somebody at 48 that could slide down the board possibly to around 55 60 range, I'm making that deal, especially if we've been talking about Zachariah Branch and a lot of people have him going late second, early third. If he's still there in the late second, do you make that move and get the extra draft picks? I just want to know y'all thoughts on that.
I think it's honestly going to be the way that the board is looking, because it really is going to depend on the talent that is there, how much talent is there that's on your board, because every team has their board. So how much of your board is still left on there, and
Agree.
is there more guys that you can look at? Because I don't think that now. Don't get me wrong, and we're going to talk about that too. There can be possible for a need. But our GM has also said you can get yourself in trouble trying to chase a need instead of just going after a player and just possibly stacking their position. So with that being said, it's going to come down to who's on the board, how much of your board is still there to be like, okay, can we afford to move down from 48 to, let's say, 63? Can we afford that and some of our guys still be there? Or can you look at it to where it's like, all right, we're going to stay pat here, but our guys from, let's say, 75 on down within the type 100, if you can move back to like 91, 92, I think that's around in the Cowboys range or something like that. They possibly may want to trade with you. You never know. And you can still be somewhere not too far away from 79, but still be able to get another one of your guys too. So it's tough. It's really tough. It really is going to me.
But think about this also, Chris. Think about the position that they need is the deepest ones in the draft. You look at wide receiver, deep as hell. Defensive tackle, deep. Offensive line, deep. So when you look at their needs, all of them are deep. All of them deep. That's what I'm saying. When you got a lot of talent in certain positions, that can afford you to move back. So I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm looking at the perspective as those three positions just so deep in this draft that you can say, hey, if we miss out on this guy, we can go to that guy, because as I said,
that's why I said who's on your board. That's also why
I'm gonna tell you this too, and I let Cam go. And this is just my thought, if Zachariah Branch, Christian Miller, or Lee Hunter and the other defensive tackle, what's his name? Or Caden McDonald first rounder.
No.
Right. If those four players are gone to 48, I can see us trading back, because I think that's the top four on the board.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, and this may not mean anything, but looking at reports, different social platforms, the Falcons were deep for UGA's pro day. And they are, I think I've said this before and I will say it again. When you think about Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith,
Yep.
just to name a few Bulldogs, I think last year it finally clicked to them that when you're getting a player from UGA, you know what you're getting.
Championship.
You're getting championship pedigree. This is Kirby Smart.
Facts.
As an individual who has covered Kirby Smart, he not like all of these other college football coaches. And I think I agree, and I agree with Smitty. And I agree with you as well, Tip. Obviously, it depends on your board. But when I sit here and say that I think it would not surprise me if Ian Cunningham and the Falcons draft at least 2 players from Georgia, one of them being Zachariah Branch. I think they want to draft Zachariah Branch. I really believe that. Now, whether it's Christian Miller or someone else, that's, again, you still know what you're getting.
Yep.
But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't recall the Falcons ever being as present as they were at a UGA Pro Day in the past, like they were this year, a few weeks ago.
About it, Cam, they would be more deep at Clemson Pro Day than anywhere, and that's up the road. So
yes.
UGA, yeah, that's a good point. But go ahead.
No. I was done, but I was just wanting to make a point that I think they are. I don't know. It's just there's no way that you can't. That when you saw Philadelphia win a championship 2 years ago, there's no way, or just last year, excuse me. I had a very difficult time not thinking to myself like, dang, Atlanta could have had Jalen Carter. Atlanta could have had Jordan Davis. Atlanta could have had Nakobe Dean. Atlanta could have had Nolan Smith. And these aren't just your ragtag role players that just came off the bench. You don't win 2 championships without 4 of those players that I just mentioned. And I know people want to say, oh, well, a college football national championship isn't like a Super Bowl. You're darn straight it isn't. But at Georgia,
it's about the coaching.
Yeah, and the thing about it, though, Cam, those same players that you just said has both now.
Bingo.
Jordan Davis is the highest defensive lineman of all time. Think about
it. All time in history. And if you want to be technical,
we talk about Reggie White, Bruce Smith, names like that.
Agreed. No, I was just gonna say too. If we're talking receivers as well, when I was watching Gunnar Stockton this year, and I was watching Carson Beck all throughout this year, the one thing occurred to me is that you can't. Now, I personally am not a huge fan of Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator at UGA. I'm personally not a big fan of him. That's just me personally. But when you look at Carson Beck and Gunnar Stockton, one of the reasons why Carson Beck played so well is that he had receivers around him.
Facts.
Me personally, Gunnar Stockton, if we're talking, Gunnar Stockton is a better dual threat quarterback than Carson Beck. Carson Beck's not really known as a dual threat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the receivers that Carson Beck had at UGA when in his final year at UGA, compared to the receivers that Gunnar had at UGA, I'm just like, hey, you know what you're getting from these players. And that's why I believe if Gunnar had a quality, I'm sorry, I'm not saying Gunnar wasn't a quality quarterback, but if Zachariah Branch had Carson Beck, I personally believe that Zachariah Branch would be a lot higher on people's mock drafts than what we're originally seeing. In other words, I could see him being a first rounder.
Yeah, because you think about it, He goes into UGA in just 1 year and
Exactly.
breaks the reception record. We talk about AJ Green. We talking about Muhammad Massacre, Andre Hastings. I can just keep going. But when you think about the receivers that have been through Georgia, he's the best one. Just think about that. Just like
War was another one, Smitty.
Just like Stetson Bennett will get the credit he deserves as a quarterback.
Exactly.
Just think about that. But go ahead, let's get it. My bad.
No, you good, big bro. I agree with what Tip said earlier, man. It just really depends, if the Falcons, whether they want to stand pat or trade back, it really depends on who you have on your draft board. Who they had their mindset of, and then what's their mentality. Are they going for need, or is it going to be back to what we saw in the past regimes, meaning, okay, we're taking the best player available? We don't know. So, I'm aligned with Tip. It's like who do they have, on their board, and if they're still there, then I don't see no reason in moving back. Now, if say Zachariah Branch and Christian Miller are not there, just saying, for the sake of this conversation, they're not there, then I would entertain them moving back. Well, they're gone now, so let's see what we can get if we move back a couple spots.
Right.
But I really don't know, big bro and Tip. I really don't know what's the best move, whether stand pat or trading back. I don't know. Just really depends.
Yeah, Solomon, that's who I was talking about. Caleb Banks, Christian Miller, Lee Hunter. Them are the three defensive linemen I think they're, aimed at the most. That's just my opinion. Zachariah Branch, he's another one. And I could throw Chris Johnson in there, the cornerback from San Diego State. If he's there at 48, they've got to take him because they need a number 2 guy. He could come in right away as a rookie and battle for that number 2 cornerback spot. So it's just how you gonna look at it.